Because at first I was liking it because I'm like, ooh, this is a really cool filter. But then I started getting a little bit annoyed because it was giving um, dehydrated lips. And I mean, I have been drinking coffee, so I do need to up my water intake right now. But also, I didn't want to like add to that, and it just didn't look as good as I thought. And I kept looking at my lips while I'm anyway. Hi. Anyway, so building a second brain. Um, I really just wanted to come on here and talk about what I've been doing in Notion. One, because I don't see a lot of these type of faces doing these types of things, right? So like I don't see them doing that. Not to say that they're not, but like some of the groups that I'm in, unless I specifically know that the group is just full of people like me, I don't assume that they are. And then of course, it's just saturated with people that don't look like me and they're not doing some of the things that I'm doing that um you know that's what my newsfeed is full of. One, because I truly enjoy their content, like it's so valuable, but also like I really have found value in those systems, like adapting some of the things that they've been using, but then also like having my own, like building up my own system because that's the point of a second brain, right? But a thing that I've found about building a second brain is that offloading into a knowledge base is more about, for me, the valuable information that I actually have been tracking in a more analog way or in a slower way than would be tracked or, maintained in Notion. I wonder if that makes sense. So, like, when I'm building a second brain, I've noticed a lot of people are trying to like really offload like everything into Notion to the point where they jump on this hamster wheel and now they're tracking their water intake. Now they're tracking like these really meticulous things that, I mean, listen, when I see, because I started off in like the bullet journal world. And so I was watching people, and I try to copy some of those things, but I'm like, it takes way too much time to even set up a spread. Yeah, I need to do a new spread for the month, like a week before the month starts, which is great, which is fine. And yet, I need something that works a little faster and already ready for me to go because that's just one less thing that I have to think about when the month comes, right? It's like I'm burning energy and I'm losing steam because I have to stop and like redo a new spread, right? And then I also don't have time to do like 3 months of spreads, 6 months of spreads ahead of time, right? And so a bullet journal was just a little slow, and so I got into using OneNote because I was like, okay, well, I need something that's going to be like a binder, but kind of organized, but then have like kind of like an infinite page, things that I wanted to do and continuously add to it, which was like, I need a stack of notebooks to keep all those things together. And I have two kids. My everyday carry is already ridiculously heavy. I'm not trying to have a whole stack of books to have to carry as well because, right? Not to say that I don't have notebooks that I carry in my everyday carry. They're just much smaller, and I'll probably go through what I keep in my everyday carry and like what's on my desk, what's in my bag, like these kind of things. I'll go into that. But also, um, I manage children, I manage business, I manage my mental health. And when I say I manage my mental health, I have to manage kind of a variety of layers of disorder, right? And so I have found that um, each of those layers actually requires my attention and engagement in a particular thing in a very specific way, right? So in order to manage, like, say, my ADHD brain, I have to actually engage with a specific thing, even if it's repetitive, because the thing about my ADHD brain is that it doesn't like repetition unless it's something that I'm specifically involved in or specifically interested in, and then I'll lose interest. Even if I'm interested in it, I'll lose interest very quickly. So, um, when it comes to things like paying bills or whatever, I try to find ways that help me to walk into that function smoothly. But then I also realize, like, it can't be something that I'm losing steam trying to do every month, meaning I can't be manually paying every single bill because between the repetitive bills like my car note, my phone bill, that type of stuff that I need to pay every month versus subscriptions that also need to come out every month versus needing gas money and doing all of those, which are a little bit more variable and flexible, that actually spent on that gas. So it took me a while to figure out how I wanted to engage with that, right? And so that kind of tracking was important to me because I realized, okay, there's some things that I do want to track beforehand on paper so I can see it, but then afterward, I just need to be able to, like, check, 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 check that it was done. So I have a system in place for that versus, um, a variety of other things, right? But I found that, like, in some of my forums, we were just kind of like, when I talked about Notion, when I nerded out about it and I was telling people about it, they'd be like, okay, cool. So they get on the Notion and this is what they'd see. And then they'd be like, I don't know what to do. And so the first thing they start doing is start, like, using it like Excel. I have the hair, so I'm tickling my nose. Anyway, so they instantly start using it like a really pretty version of Excel. And so we would just stick everything that we could spreadsheet pot as possible, like everything we could, and it would either just be like chart after chart after chart of all kinds of things that we would never track regularly, or it would just the information would still get lost and then we don't trust the system anymore, right? So it's like it becomes another one of those failed attempts at bullet journaling or whatever because we're not completely sure how to use it. So I had gone down that rabbit hole and I had come to find Tiago Forte. And before he actually wrote the book, I was really consuming a lot of his content about building the second brain and understanding what that meant because we have all of these sources of information in the same way that we might have a variety of sources of income. And then as life progresses, we kind of lose track of where the information went, right? And so it became even more imperative that we created a system and a system for our knowledge base that allowed us to retrieve the information and decide what we wanted to do with it. Um, um, what I found though, as I was creating my second brain and kind of using the para method that Tiago Forte suggests, where you're talking about your projects, your areas, your resources, and your archives, that I realized that my areas were very specifically um, allotted, right? And then over time, I also realized that I could actually build out my areas and allot time and money to them. So I've been on this app for maybe four. What's the matter, Lily? What? Okay. I always, always a thing. So anyway, I don't remember what I was saying. So we'll just go back to Tiago Forte, Paramethod, expanding it into now how I break up my time and my bank accounts. I'll probably get into that a little bit later. But um So now I've adapted a variety of different systems. I follow some content creators through Notion. My brain was gonna say August Alsina, but that's not his name. His name is August Bradley. I think the came up, the the first person I found after Tiago Forte was Marie Poulin, which I think she had done some collaborations with him kind of right at the very beginning. Red Gregory, they do some awesome work um, with like formulas and things. Um, Nut Labs, Better Creating, Productive Dude. So there are a good variety of people that I've adapted some of their systems and some of their frameworks to figuring out how I'm going to like lay out and build certain things. And so in my area, there's been some places where I've used AI. There's been some places where I use Better Creating. So like if you've already done some of this stuff, it's going to be really familiar. And if you've not, so this will be kind of new. This is still kind of messy, sandboxy, and yet I'm cool with that because it's still way more organized than my actual brain is, and so it's serving its purpose. Excuse me. Anyway, so this is what I imagine I want my dashboard to look like. This is actually not what this icon used to be. Oops. So that's not what that used to be either. It used to be like one of those little like red envelopes that you would get for the Chinese New Year kind of things. But anyway, so this is what I imagine my dashboard to be like. So there's these, there, that thing right there. These are actually links to other pages. These are kind of like my favorites. And it's also a sig block, which is why you see that little red box around it, meaning I can actually copy this and paste it on other pages. I'm not even actually sure if I want to keep using this because there have been other ways that I have been able to um, get to other pages. And then the fact that I can actually have a favorites bar here, it's almost redundant, but it's still useful. It hasn't not served me, although when I get onto these pages, I actually never use this. So I'm not sure if I want to get rid of it, but I like the way it's formatted. So it might end up in just um, someplace else to be for me to use somewhere else whenever I find that like it could be the most useful. So this is my dashboard, um, and these are some things that I'll ask myself to affirm the way I want to show up in my day every day, and how I am presenting myself. So I think that like um, mindfulness practice has been something that has been working very well for me. And so when I ask myself, when I'm able to like sit down and ask myself like, how will I invite abundance into my life today? Not necessarily I don't ask myself how will I invite abundance into my life today, but usually what am I inviting into my life today? Right? Like what do I invite to this party? Not that every day is a party, but sometimes we have pity parties, right? And do we want to invite people to that? Because sometimes misery loves company, and so perhaps we need a person whose shoulder we can cry on or whatever. We won't get into that. But, how is life responding to me today? What invitations am I responding to today? Will I attend this experience wholeheartedly? This is on the positive and the negative side because when I heard one lady say, "You pitch a tent, I bring the circus," it's like, oh, yes, sometimes I will go there. Sometimes I do have the time to take it there, and I will take it all the way there. This child is playing with me right now because they think this is a game. I really hate that. It really grinds my gears. Like, go to bed. Go lay down, please. Go lay down, please. It's quiet time. That means it's time for children to be quiet so I can actually do some things without having to tell them to go lay down and stop running and all the other things. But whatever. Anyways, also they've been out of school for all week basically because they've had fevers and maybe strep throat. Strep throat's been going around in their school, so they've had fevers like consistently. Nothing more, but nothing less either. So it's kind of annoying, but also, what do you do? So these are the things that I'm wanting to show up on my dashboard. I'm thinking that I want something to like maybe a journal because, well, let me back up. Well, let me continue and then I'll come back to it. So I think I want to add something to this, like maybe a button that will add a new page into a journal or something so that I'm constantly actually like actively engaging and not just asking myself, periodically throughout the day and then just keeping it in my head because part of this is about offloading and not necessarily even about offloading to forget, but offloading to engage. And so that is a major thing for me that when it comes out of my brain and onto some paper or even out of my mouth and recorded and documented in some way that it actually is like stuck saved somewhere, then I know that I have some place that I can go back and like revisit and re-engage it at a later time. Leon, please go lay down. So there. Shopping list. So I actually have a space where I am building out a meal planner and recipe book and things like that. And so this will be a view of that database where it'll just be filtered for the things that um, I need to shop for. And I'd like for it to be categorized by like the store. Although I don't usually do a lot of different store trips so much anymore. Um, but there are specifically things that I like to go to very specific places for. Like I like certain grocery stores for their produce versus I'll go to Walmart for like cereal. So there's that. Then I have this inbox, and the way this is sorted has come from Productive Dude. So if you're interested in like the way this database is set up, it doesn't look the same as his, but I prefer it this way so that I can actually capture and sort things out of my inbox. Um, but a lot of these notes are coming from the other devices that I use to capture my notes. And so I don't use a note taking app, and I definitely don't really come straight into Notion to start taking notes because the ideas that I engage with are not, they don't show up in blocks. Why are you, Ginger? Man, y'all just invading my space. Just y'all bubbles always touching my bubbles. Go lay down. Wow. Like every day. Like they just be tag teaming me on, because I got three. Well, I don't, I have two humans and a dog. So equals three. Anyway, so the getting things done methodology um is that you code or now code actually comes from another person whose content I've just found, but it's basically the same. It's you capture, you organize, you decide, and then you engage. I don't think that's exactly what he said, but that's how I understand it. I think that it's a little bit different in the getting things done methodology. It's a little bit aside, but also kind of the same in that the one thing you touch, once it's in the inbox, you touch it one time. Not that you touch it one time to completion, you touch it one time and you put it where it's supposed to go one time. It doesn't fall back into another inbox. But um, in the way that it finds itself where it needs to go, technically it's still another inbox, but it's way easier to manage because it's where it belongs. So that I get to decide how I want to address it and when, right? Which then kind of rolls itself into, how much time I spend in each of my pillars, because my pillars are basically my areas broken down into four main pillars and four sub pillars. So, and that's what these are. So the domain is basically my archive, and then all of these other ones are pillars in my areas, pillars within my area, right? So the domain is actually my space for my resources and my archive. So it's a kind of dual use, a multi use library. It's basically the library, like the back of my mind. Leon. Okay. Anyway, so my inbox is actually in the domain because it starts at the front, and there might be some things that just stay back there, not because they're useless pieces of information, but that's just where my resource bucket is. That is not the only place where resources live. If I have external storage. I have a variety of hard drive storages, right? So I have my laptop storage. I have two laptops. So I have my home laptop storage. I have my work laptop storage, and then I have a Google Drive. So, but however, also whichever conjunction actually fits best in there, that um, I have about four Google Drive accounts, which house the documents and things that are like the hard copies of the things that belong here. But these areas actually allow me to then connect those pieces into like little packets, right? So like, you know, if I've done some mental health stuff, it's like a packet. So like, you know, my therapist might have given me some documents that are like, this is what we did in session 2 versus what we did in session 3. But in Notion, I actually have a space where I put, excuse me, I put the entire like I put all the sessions in like a classroom setting. And so that's just one page that houses like all the sessions, and it has all the documents, copies of the documents within it. I want you. Okay. Now I'm just talking to myself. It houses a copy of each of those documents within the packet, but then but it's connected to the Google Drive. Now, the beauty of it being in Notion is that it takes the copy and you can actually download it from there. But I also still, if something were to happen in like Notion, hopefully, God forbid, it crashes, I still have all the other information. I haven't had a serious issue with it, and I'm really glad that however they are managing their network has allowed like a whole lot of people to be able to use this very heavily. And when I say heavily, like they're running their businesses through here and using automation tools to like use this very heavily. So like I can trust it for now until they have something that happens that I'm like, I guess I can't trust it, right? But like I haven't had a reason not to trust it, and so cool. Um, so anyway, so these are each of those places. So starting with my inbox, this is the things. Oh, so we'll go from capture. So this is basically a template for a new note. Um, I'm not sure where some of this came from because I it didn't come in like this. I want to say that this came from an audio message. So I was trying to do an automation through Zapier where the automation actually, for every time I did an audio to do recording, um, that when I uploaded it into a particular folder in my Google Drive that my Zapier had access to, it would automatically transcribe the audio and then send the audio into a new page in Notion, create the new page, and then the AI would set out the action steps. So this is kind of a piece of that. Because what I found was one, I ramble in my audio messages sometimes, and so uh, and I realized that the tokens that I had available for the free account in my ChatGPT only allowed me about like 15 to 20 minutes, which is actually more than enough. Because if I'm really just audio messaging to dos, it really shouldn't take 15 to 20. Anyway, so um, 15 to 20 minutes is actually more than enough time to like say the action steps that need to happen. Because sometimes I do get stuck trying to figure out where I need to write the action steps down. But this is just one way that I get that down. And then the template itself had these buttons already in it. So if it means I have to add a new task, I add a new project, I add a new goal, right? Based on whatever I'm saying in there. Then there's a page to go back to the dashboard, which is this one here, and then I can insert the note page, which is like if I actually wrote something down. Leon, please get out. He'll do this for like hours, which gets to be so like after 30 minutes, I'm like, bro, I'm not chasing you, which is why I haven't got it up again. But I'm also like, bro, when are you just gonna stop running? Like he'll do this every time it's time to go to sleep. Every time it's time to go to sleep, because he'll do this during the day and he'll do it at night. And then he wouldn't have slept all day long, and he will do this all day long, and then hate to wake up. I'm like, bro, just take a nap. I'm not laughing, Leon. I'm not laughing because it's not funny anymore. It's not a fun game to play. This is not a game I like to play. I am not having fun right now, Leon. So, um, this is kind of just a general thing, right? Um, and then because it's in the capture sort area, then because there's action steps associated, go because there's action steps associated, then I can say that it's actions required. And then I can even go further into say what the next action is, what projects there are associated. Is it less than 5 minutes? I give it 5 minutes. The getting things done methodology says 2 minutes, but there ain't nothing that I can do in 2 minutes. Not even make a phone call. I don't even think a phone call is 5 minutes. Like, who's doing that? Whether it's and maybe a 5 minute like text message, maybe a 2 minute text message. Of less than 5 minutes would be like respond to an email that I acknowledge that I received it. It's a lot. Is there more than one action required? Usually, if it's a task that um, is only one action required, right? Because the question of being action required, that's already a yes, right? The assumption is that there are one or more actions required. If there are more than one action required, then I can click that and then I can like move it into another set of things. Now, I have adapted some of the other areas, some of the other databases that are associated with the other checkboxes here. So they don't necessarily show up in that way just yet. I'm still building those things out to find where it actually makes sense. But right now, because it's a capture space, this is kind of all of the things that I would like to be able to reference when it comes to getting and then I can say that it's done. So this is one page. Um, Let me see if I can find one where I actually like hand wrote some stuff. Okay, here's one. So this note came from my iPad. This is an old note. Obviously, my dashboard was kind of old. This was from March, right? But this is kind of what I imagine my dashboard to look like on my iPad. Now I have three different devices that I use to, or actually two different devices that I use to like handwrite um, notes and tasks on. I have an Android because I had my iPad before I actually had my Android phone, and so I was trying to figure out how I could get the handwriting kind of situation working, right? And so this is kind of what I came up with. This part didn't come, I really didn't understand what to do with that just yet. So because this was a few months ago, things have adapted since then that I may or may not continue to use. I might actually still use my iPad for this purpose. This was actually like actually Honolulu. So this was actually March 29th, like a few years ago. Because I don't even live in Honolulu anymore. But course stretch, portfolio edits. Oh yeah. So I'm not even doing these things anymore. So this is like a few years old. But basically, what I liked to see was that for each day, this is like a new journal page, and so this new journal page would show up in my Notion, and then I could just like this would just show up, and then I could like create the action steps, and oftentimes if it was like a less than 5 minute thing, it really wouldn't land here because it would get done because I knew that it was one task that could get done like right away in that sitting while I was thinking about it. I was just writing it down to make sure that in that moment of sitting down, writing down my to-dos, that the next things to do were the really short tasks. However, in the getting things done methodology, he did say to be wary of those things because you can hamster your wheel into only doing the things that are going to be like, I can get them done really, really fast, and then you still don't get yourself into the longer tasks and projects and goals. Like, you're not moving the needle as much as you could be because you're not getting those other things done. Okay, so yeah, so this was one way that I thought hey, maybe I could do um, something. Um, it helped me figure out what I really wanted to do and what I didn't really want to do. I don't need that anymore, so I can delete that page. There's an audio file. So this is set up for the weekend launch strategy. I don't remember how long this is, but obviously I'd have to go through and transcribe it myself because Notion does not have a transcription tool in it yet, at least. And I'm thinking that I would do um, that in here and then tell the AI to pull out the action steps. Although if I was doing it myself, I probably wouldn't transcribe and then pull out the action steps. I would just pull out the action steps because all the rest of that, because it's my brain. So there's that. So this comes from um, my Android phone. So my Android phone has its own handwriting note taking app. And so I just send the screenshot straight into the Notion app from my phone, and it comes into a new note in here, and then I can create the action steps depending on what those things are. And then, um, yeah, so if there's like a couple of, so there'd be like to do, plans of action, and all those things, then obviously I'd have to go through there and create the action steps, and then I'd get rid of the note, or I'd put the note in my um, domain just for like archiving reasons. But really, once I pulled out the action steps and created a task slash project slash goal that's associated with that note, then I can just discard the note, right? Because I still want to manage the clutter. Otherwise, if there's something that are specific to particular pillars, then it gets dragged into that pillar, and then that group then it gets filtered into another uh, area in my workspace. So then I determine what to do. So now these are databases that, excuse me, they will show up in these areas, and this is basically like another area. This is from my inbox to the sorted pieces, right? So if I were to just like take them and then decide there's something to do with that. So if I have to do this, then does this mean that it's like one task that I need to do, or is it a project now? And in terms of the getting things done, if it's got two or more action steps, it's a project. It doesn't matter that it's not actually a project, but if you expand your mind into thinking that if it's not one task, it's a project, then you automatically train your mind to allot the time that is necessary to complete that project, even if it's just an hour, right? So then you have 1 hour projects, you have 4 hour projects, you have 2 day projects or whatever, but you're actually more realistically managing your time and resources and energy into getting some other things done that have a little bit better you have a better chance of completing it than if you were to say, oh well, this is just like a one time thing, and then you realize like you got to sit down and actually you know engage with it for an hour or more, and you maybe didn't think about that to begin with. And that's another thing that I have to think about, especially with time blindness as a symptom of ADHD, is that like I can sit there and be like, oh, it's not gonna take that much time. But then when I sit down and realize like completing this one task that I thought was not gonna take a lot of time actually is taking way more time because there were like many steps that each took their own 5 or 10 minutes to complete. And I was only really thinking that completing the whole thing was only going to take me like 30 minutes or so, right? So there's that. So there's these things. And then I just created this database twice so that I didn't have to do a lot of scrolling. Everything could just kind of sit on one page. And because I have 8 pillars, and they're not necessarily 8 full pillars, they're just 4 main pillars and 4 sub-pillars. These pillars here actually belong to respective, well, not necessarily respective, because king and trust go together, society and worship go together, execute and ink incorporated go together, and then refine and life go together. When I get to each of those areas more in depth, then it'll make a little bit more sense. So then there's those, and then I have a domain area. So if from here I put in my inbox that like it's a resource, like I did like a web clip, or I added a link, or I added a YouTube page or whatever, or I just kind of write a note that says, look up some information about this particular thing, then it can go down here. And then once it's placed in there, then I can actually like individually say send to domain. Now I'm sure that there's a way to make this thing go faster, but the thing that I like is that I get to engage with that piece so that it doesn't just get lost, and then I have to guess if it went there or not, and then you know that's a whole other set of problems that I really don't want. So then the next things that I want to be able to build out later are my goals progress, my projects progress, and my tasks progress. I probably will get rid of the tasks progress because that doesn't really make a lot of sense. Like if I'm not getting one task completed all the way, then I'm not really trusting my system. I'm kind of just hamster wheeling, right? So the project progress is a little bit better of an assessment of how I'm managing my time because I'm completing one task at a time. And even if it is one task at a time, I'm completing one task at a time. And so the idea is that um, I see for each of these pillars which projects, and not even for each of the pillars, but for each of the projects that belong to the pillars. And not every pillar has a project, and not every pillar has a goal. Well, no, I think every pillar has a goal, and there are some projects that there are, but some are meant to take all year. So it's not like I'm gonna be I'm looking to get 100%, but we're looking for progression and not perfection. And so um, the tracking is less about getting 100%, and it's more about, okay, how am I engaging with this work to move the needle? So there's that. So that's what this dashboard is about. So then there's my favorites here. There's a couple of little things that I want to do with that. I have my timelines here. So I have a page for this year. Um, this I try to change with the theme that coincides with the Chinese horoscope. So this year is the year of the Blackwater rabbit. So this image is actually of like bunny ears kind of like poking out of some water, which is really cute. And then there's that. And then this is like the mantra for life, right? But also it's like more of like an action that also aligns with each of the pillars that I want to engage with regularly. So this is kind of like one of those mantras that I've kind of came up with. There's some themes in here. So this is also from an app that I use on my iPad that allows me to like write some things. And so this was from that. And then there's like a page for birthdays, some of these things. There's some like more general, more specific, in depth stuff. I don't actually follow everything here. I don't follow everything on here, excuse me. But because I'm not super in depth with like the zodiac and things like that. But I do like to have an idea of like um energy budgeting, right? And so that's really helpful to like decide what these things, how these things resonate with me energetically and spiritually, so that I can be like, okay, so this kind of resonates with me, so this probably means I need to align in this way, and all of that. So um there's that. So go back to the timelines, and so each of those also have like goals associated. So obviously I haven't really engaged with some of these things since like March, right? February, March timeframe. And I just was toying with the idea of like, what do I want to see on each of these pages so that when I come here, even though it's only periodically, what do I want them to look like? Now, I tried to do a mobile dashboard um, because I thought that I would want a separate page to engage with each of these pieces, with each of the areas, right? So there's like a journal area, there is a note to add action steps, which was part of the inbox. Um, review and reset. So this is about like, web clippings and like URLs type of thing. I just add the bookmark there. And then win the day, which was like another like reflective tool, journal tool, something like that. Um, so that it would be easy to look at and it would be simple, because what happens is when you're looking at some of these things on your phone is that even though you have a full page to see on your computer, it doesn't translate. And so it just kind of cuts your stuff in half and puts everything on the second column space next, like on the next line. And so if you're not aware of that, if you are not mindful of that, then the way you organize your page, you'll have to do a whole lot of scrolling. And, if you're new to the system, it's going to be counterintuitive. And so that's something that to be mindful of. Anyway, so there's the timeline. Um, then my other thing. So now let's get into my areas. So this is my resource and archive page. These are pages that existed. Um, I think I tried to like create like a wiki out of this because that's a really it, it, oh, so this is something that I use in a variety of different areas, and so I wanted to keep it in the resources page so that I can always come back to it if I need to like create a template or something like that. Um, I thought that I wanted something where I can keep each month as a page, and then within the page have like, I don't know. I'd seen some people have these really cool, what seemed like wikis, where it wasn't like they were just using like links to these pages like this. But when you link the page, it usually looks like this, right? But the way that they were doing it, it looked very much like, oh, I got rid of that. It looked more like this, right? But it was like they had one database and then like one page belonged to one of these like pillars or areas, right? And it was like you just click into it and it had like a whole it just kind of showed a whole new page. I'm not sure how they were doing that. I'm not sure what that was. For some reason, I'm sure I'm overthinking it. I'm not really sure what that was. I didn't really find as much value in it, at least not yet. So it wasn't really working for me. So I was like, okay, maybe I'll just come back to that another time. So the mission for not just the domain, but the mission for all of these pillars is to figure out is to find a way to manage my life in a way that allows me to engage with all the things that are important to me, and then create a community around it, and then offer it to people. So there's that, and then we'll break down each of the pillars here. So in this here, I actually created this page, and I'm now that Notion has a wiki um, option, I can turn it into a wiki. This page would probably live and thrive better as a wiki because of all the things that are associated with it. But this has been really helpful in just being reminded of what each of these pillars um, are good for, right? So I have content calendar things, I have sermons that are associated, I have spending plan things that are associated, but this is probably the most useful, the related tags, right? So I have a master tag database, which is really just all of the things that could possibly be associated with um, each of the pillars. I wish, though, that for each of these, it would wrap that so I could see all the tags together. What I tried to do is find something that would allow me to see all the cards. See, I don't know. See, this is kind of where I started getting a little aggravated because I was like, I really wanted to do something else, right? But this is probably the best that I could get is to find something that will use the tags in this way because this actually like shows you a good number of tags. Load limit, let's say 100 pages. Oh, not that it made a difference, but there are tags that are associated with there, so I can like see them. they live better on each of the pages because then I can filter it and then I can like you can see all of the tags in that way, right? Let's see if I can see it here. So I have there's branches of each of those things, and then um, a little kind of graphic that I created just by handwriting some stuff on one of the apps that I used. So, oh, right here. So, um, what I plan to do on each of my pages is in each of these areas create the tag, and then I have a view of the related tag on that page so that I can always be reminded of like the contexts that belong there. And of course, as I build out and use the system, then tags can be added and they'll actually just populate themselves here. Now, obviously, I haven't used this template in a while, and so I'm sure I'll just go through and kind of give it that uniformity that makes it look nice and pretty. But yeah, so that's kind of generally what I want it to look like. So I have the emotional guidance scale, which helps me to be reminded of when I'm actually in my journal, what the purpose of using the emotional guidance scale is, and then I have a database for the scale. So I've actually given it a level number. I think I might have also like used it in a roll up in some areas. I'm not really sure, but it came to be really useful in my journals because then I actually would like, oh right, so when I started doing my moon journaling, what's really cool is that I would do my moon journal and I would open it up and I would just basically and I would do this on my phone, right? So this is actually not filled out on my computer. This thing is filled out from my phone. I usually sit on my computer in my Notion when I want to do some like actual building. And so when I'm actually using the system in real time, I'm using it on my phone. And so I try to make these pages as intuitive as possible when it comes to filling it out completely and giving my and like offloading in a way that actually relaxes and um, clears my mind in the way that a journal is supposed to, right? So I have questions here. This is actually a template that shows up for each moon that I journal. So I usually do full and new moon journaling. Once I actually get the rhythm of doing my moon journaling, I may start including the other phases. But full and new tend to be the ones where I actually come into that space more intentionally and more mindfully rather than trying to just keep up with, oh, it's time, oh, it's time, oh, it's time. So that's been really helpful. And so, of course, my spirit is feeling. And when I say my spirit is feeling, this is what's attached to the emotional guidance scale and versus what my nature is feeling. And my nature is basically trying to tap into the mindfulness and pay attention to how my body is feeling. Am I feeling angsty? Am I feeling tired? Am I feeling ready? Is not necessarily one of those things, but I put that there because I wasn't really sure what that word was for that physical feeling of readiness, but there was a readiness there. It's probably a spiritual, energetic word more so than nature, but I tried not to add more words than the ones that are kind of universally used in the emotional guidance scale. There's the other one. So there's that. Elements, zodiacs. This is I have an app that actually gives me information about like the type of full moon that we're in and if there's a zodiac associated with it. Sometimes I'll research if there's a color or a texture. Sometimes these textures really come from me. Like if I'm feeling, if my nature is feeling this, then usually I have a sensory coping thing that I use to kind of help manage that. And then I may have colors associated with that. I'm sure later on I'll be able to actually like engage more deeply so that these things actually come into a more physical sense. So maybe, the a green cozy knit might manifest itself into like a cozy bulky knit, green bulky knit throw that finds itself on my bed, right? And so when I'm feeling free, but insecure, but appreciative, having positive expectation or whatever, I'm kind of like holding on to this like teddy bear fleece, cozy knit fleece, this green teddy bear fleece, cozy knit throw that I keep over my shoulders or something like that, right? Um, Something like that. The animal is a wolf because it's a full wolf moon for this time. So there's all of that. Also in worship, there are some goals to there, and then I have a money pot and a wish list. So um, each of my boards, each of my dashboards in my areas will have a money pot and a wish list. Money pot, meaning I literally have a money pot associated with the money that gets placed into a bank account or like a cash allotment that allows me to then decide if there's something on this wish list that I want, I can buy it, plain and simple. But then also, this is associated with this money work page here, where it's a budgeting tracking system that has like a balance sheet associated. It's got a breakdown of actually like I said, each pillar has money associated with it, and a savings account and all of those things. And then like the purposes, which is kind of a tag, but like not really. Um, and then right now I'm actually building out a debt payoff system. So these are actually going to become a view on here that actually shows me my progress toward eliminating my debt. And then these are all just like pages that are sandbox that are associated with this page, right? So I have income, I have the payments that are being used, and these are broken down. Like I love that they've had this subgroupings so that I can actually group my table contents now and not have to leave the view because perhaps I like the view better. I also like the fact that I can get rid of those grid lines so it gives it a nice, like more streamlined and kind of clean look. Um, but yeah, so this is kind of this part should be actually something that's going to roll into a sinking funds view. So once I'm kind of done finishing up the calculation parts, like adding the formulas where they go, then what's going to end up happening is that like these are going to show up on each of the pages and show like incrementally monthly or whatever year to date, month to date, how much money is there, should be there, right? Because this is more real time reconciliation than perhaps banking. And although banks don't necessarily, they typically do a good job of reconciliation, regular reconciliation, but for me to have a handle on my money in the way that like because time is not necessarily money, but the way that I spend my time can influence how I spend my money. It's really important that I engage with my money in the same way that I engage with my time, which means that if I'm not like engaging even to see how much automatically is coming out or coming in, that I'm gonna lose it because it's out of my hand, it's out of sight, out of mind. So that's like an important thing that I have to be mindful of. So um, there's that. So and then I have projects and tasks that are associated also with that to make sure that I get those things done. And then each of the pages have their own things. Now, this is about the skill craft. So, um, these are the skills that I've built. The way that I got to this came from my resume, matter of fact. So I went through my resume and I was like, well, how can I figure out the thing that's going to make me money if I were to start a business? And so I wrote out all the things and actually used this concept of ikigai, which is life's purpose, I think, in Japanese. It basically uses like um, a Venn diagram um, kind of worksheet for people to decide like what things they do well, what things pay them well, and what things like the world needs. And then, because they are interlinked, you get to decide, you know, the things that actually are like, you know, the middle point of those. But then also because the three of them will also come together in this one little small space, then that is your sweet spot and that is your life's purpose, right? So, in that way, that's how all of these came to life because I'm like, oh, these are all the things that make me me. These are all the things that are important to me. These are all the things that I can do, right? So I'm organization, I'm into image consulting. These are the things that like people come to me for, right? These are the things that I've been paid to do. So obviously, I do them well enough to be professional at it. And the thing is, you're a professional if somebody's putting you on their I-9 or you have gotten paid in some capacity to do this thing. If you have gotten some money to do anything that you do in your life, you are a professional. So, with that in mind, how do you then engage with being a professional at the thing that you're doing? It was an urgent but not important thing to do. That doesn't make sense to me. And my brain kind of like short circuits because I'm like, what? So I don't mess with that. But okay, plug it in. Plug it on. Yeah. Um, but I think the overall purpose of the MRT backlog system is to basically engage with your energy budget, with your energy budget. So you're not spending your energy tokens, right? So in the way that AI uses tokens, uses a certain amount of tokens to do certain tasks, and so it may use more tokens to do these tasks than it does to do these type of tasks. It's kind of the same thing. You have an energy budget, and so it takes a particular type of energy. You can call it a currency. It may be a different currency because it requires a different side of your brain, right? So, like, the type of energy it requires to fold your laundry versus the type of energy it requires to learn a new language, right? It has very much to do with your level of engagement, um, the actual like deep focus that's required to do the thing, and then you get to decide if you want to um, multitask. I don't personally believe there's such thing as multitasking, but I do believe there's such thing as like uh, dual energy or multi energy or a combination of things that you are doing consecutively, which is like a multitask, although you're not actually engaging with all of the things at the same time, right? Like you're not like multitasking is not I'm watching a show and folding the laundry. Because guess what? I'm not actually watching the show if I'm folding the laundry. I'm folding the laundry and the show is just on. And so I don't actually have to do anything to necessarily engage with the show. But then also, I can't necessarily engage with a show the way I want to if it's a new show, right? So like it's got to be something that I've kind of already ramped into and I know the characters so I don't have to like watch to see who's talking to who. I know what they sound like. I know what they look like. I can, anime is really great for that because there's a lot like I can invest a little bit of time in the beginning on the front end to like understanding who these people are so that then later on I can be like, oh, okay, yeah. because sometimes you get into a show and it starts getting good, and then you'll stop doing the thing that you were doing that was intended to be done while you're watching the show because you get into the show, and guess what? You're not multitasking anymore because the clothes aren't folding themselves, right? Which is why I'm like, there's no such thing as multitasking because you can only engage with one thing at a time, period. So, but if you want to maintain the deep focus that you need to have for a particular thing that is not necessarily sharpening a skill, but just kind of getting a thing done, like cleaning your house, that type of thing, then it makes sense that you would listen to an audiobook at the same time. Perhaps you could learn a new language if you could manage doing that at the same time. Um, because it's still that those processes don't require the same parts of your brain to execute. And so you get to practice, you know, running and chewing gum at the same time, or one of those type of things. You know what I mean? So it's like that. I haven't figured out how I want to use this or if it's even valuable to me, but I thought it was important because when I thought it was not important, but interesting because when I watched the video, I was like, oh, this is really cool because of the way that he was explaining it. So I kind of went through and followed along with how to build, excuse me, the database out, but I'm not sure that I'm going to use that. So, but it'll stay there. I'll probably put this in the domain and it just be a worksheet that becomes like something that I can use or something that I don't want to use later on. So, King, this is about family stuff. This is about creating a legacy, but part of the creation of legacy is relationship. Um, and so, in helping to build relationship, I am doing things like, and when I say homework, it's not just about doing laundry, doing dishes, things like that, but maintaining the home does fall in line with there. So I'll keep my home and auto information in there, things like, um, you know, manuals for the fridge or contact information for maintenance, property maintenance, and management. I do have home improvement and decoration projects in there because I do like to do that type of DIY stuff to make my house look nice and cozy and like my oasis type of thing. I love that. This I use for like house hunting stuff. So like all the information that I use to when I'm looking for a new place or whatever, I'll put it into there. Um, this was actually a kind of cool resource that I used that I created a legend that was for like the types of things that I was looking at and for. Um, and then I created a database for it. Now I don't think okay. So there are things in here. These are really old. They don't, you know, they I'm sure they're not for sale anymore. But I did all that and then I actually created something where I put in all the information in there. And then I created like check marks for each of the properties. Like have I been there with the lot information, like all the things, right? And then the rating would basically coincide with um, how many of these checks were marked. And then later on, when it came down to like whittling down on the decision that I would make, it would be based on the rating for that. And then I could determine, okay, this rating was like the highest rating, but is it within my price range? Because that takes away some stars or whatever. So there's those type of things. I thought this was a really cool database that I created to like really be intentional about where I wanted to live and how I was going to walk those steps out in getting there because there's also information on like filling out the packets for home buying, so like all of the documents that you have to sign and like all of the information that you learn, and especially being a first time home buyer, like I wanted a place to keep all that information. uh yeah, actually this probably belongs in here. Boo cubbies. This is for kid stuff. So this is an area that I want to be able to flesh out. It will probably also be a wiki for this. Let's turn it into a wiki now, just because this message just make it a wiki. Well, no, just make it a wiki. I have to go through all the things. Like it makes me do all the things before I can like try it out. But anyway, so this is the wiki now. And so I want to be able to teach my kids about God, learn and play because that's how they are learning, they're playing. Then there's kids' foods, which I think what I'll do is attach some things to from um, my recipe book into here that allows me to just see the things that my kids like. I don't know if I want to use it like that. It seems a little redundant, but also just kind of a nice area that is just for them. That like I don't have to go into my stuff and it just becomes like they're part of all this big thing, but that they have their own space. I'm really interested in having a focus where they have a space. And so if I practice giving them a space like this here, then it makes it easier to manifest that in a physical realm where they do get a space that they understand is just for them and not just a, but also they understand that it's a part of a larger thing. But this is for them. I hope that makes sense. Boss baby. Oh, so this is basically um a wiki for babies. This wiki is basically the baby version of mine, right? So I'm thinking that I want to make this into a baby version. So they also have a domain, a Boo Cubby's domain, where it's a baby library of like resources for parenting and things like that. Maybe not parenting, but this is probably where the learn and play is going to be at. Um, but maybe I'll have separate entities because I think that um, the the pillars that are missing from this area are like the domain is missing. Boss Baby is Inc. There's the society, which probably is part of the holiday fund. There's trust. The trust here is literally like security, um, security measures, whether that's you know digital security, home security, financial security. And when I say financial security, like investments and like longevity and that type of stuff. Um, and building a trust and having a will and those type of things. So I want that to also kind of land itself in this area in a baby way as well. Earn Your Leisure is a really good source that I've been following to get um, more information about how they've been able to, how they started out teaching kids how to do this, right? Middle school age kids how to invest their money and economics and kind of build their financial literacy. And so I feel like the information that I gain from learning from them on that level, I can also try to figure out how to do that for my kids in this way. But also for kids, I've found that a lot of the things that they're learning, those teeny little tidbits kind of mash into all of their learning. Yes, baby. Ginger! She must need to use the potty. We'll go use the potty in just a second. We'll take her to use the potty in just a second, okay? Don't push her. She can go on her own. You don't want her to trip. Uh okay. That's king. So life, another page that I've done a little bit more fleshing out. See if there's like a boo cubbies there, which I did more things in this page than I did in the other one because initially I thought that boo cubbies was gonna live under life because like it's part of life that I had kids. I'm still working some of these pages out to figure out where exactly they are. And also, as you've noticed, some of the pages have lost that master tag database, which is why then I've decided or I've had a hard time figuring out like what goes where. But um, I'm finding more clarity in it. So obviously, you know. Anyway, so I have homework, which I'm not sure why this homework is there. We'll move that over here because that doesn't go there anyway. We'll put this over here too because I think those belong there. And then this is the mailbox and this is the library. So the library is basically the domain, but under a life library filter. And then this is the inbox. From the main inbox, there's just a view here that is just of the inbox with the pillar associated to it. Um, oh, see, like it's down here already. So I could probably get rid of that, but not yet because I haven't fully fleshed out what I want to do with these things yet. And then I also created this banner here because I thought it was a really cool way to like um, give like sections to my pages. This was before I found out that you could actually code banner lines and actually have like different thicknesses, and then you can actually like insert um, banners as images that can stretch across, and then you can actually make your page even more aesthetic. I'll do that at some point. Right now, it's not that time because I still haven't figured out like all of the things just yet. And because as I was figuring out what those things were, Notion was getting more updates like columns and more banners and dividers and things like that. So I was like, okay, let me just figure out what content I want to put on there. And by the time I'm ready for that aesthetic thing, it'll have all the pieces that I want there. And so far, so good. So this has been one of those ones that I've really done a lot of playing in. So I have my menu and meal plan. So um, my menu, I have not done as much with because um, what I wanted to do was attach it to the regular calendar, like, you know, how you would do like on an actual journal where you have like the day page and like all the things that would happen, and then it would also populate a menu item for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and maybe a snack. But I couldn't figure out how that was going to happen without creating like a million and one relations and roll ups that was just going to start to become really clunky and cumbersome. Because if some of you haven't noticed, if you are doing that in your Notion, sometimes it takes your Notion a little bit longer to load, and I still needed it to be a fast thing, or I would stop trusting it. So, um, something that was going to be simple. But in terms of the meal plan, oh, this thing says that it's in the trash. What does that mean? The thing is, I have another page. See, so this is taking some time to populate because I have a lot of stuff on there. I don't want to delete this yet, even though it's a shortcut. I'm wondering if... Okay, no, my internet's still working. My headphones seem to not be working. Maybe they died just now? Yeah, I think my headphones died. I wonder if how long my headphones have been dead, because it's noise canceling, and that was kind of... It just stopped doing the noise canceling, so they must have died just now, so... Okay,
yeah. So we do that. Okay, there we go. So we have all of those things. Bodies of work is something that I created for a variety of different things. It actually is now its own brand, which this part gets a little bit confusing because in the way that all of these other areas don't necessarily have like a brand associated with it, and I'll actually come to that. This, while it's a part of my life, and I've created something called Bodies of Work that helps me to like talk about and focus on my own body and wellness and things like that, is actually branched out into something much bigger than just being about me. That there's also a portion that finds itself in ink, which is beauty and kind of all of that. And I'll get to that. But here it's really just about my meal planning and my wellness and all of that. So, okay, here we go. So I can actually go back to there and delete this because this actually is here. So there's that. So I have my recipes here. And I've filled a lot of these out. Some of these are actually pages from like their web clippings and stuff. So like it's there and then there's the instructions there. But I haven't like filled out all the things yet because perhaps I haven't used them just yet. The main part that I've done is my pantry. So I've actually like done the separation of my pantry in such a way that like makes the most sense, which has been pretty cool. I'm still fleshing it out in terms of like things I buy and whatever. So this is one pantry list, but obviously the filter allows me to just see all of my produce things, right? So, and obviously not everything is filled out, but some things are filled out because these are things that I like buy regularly. So I try to like make it nice and like aesthetic in the way that like I can see these things. And like I said, not everything is set up that way, but some things are. So it actually looks pretty cool. The things that have been populated in there are the things that I've actually gone through the entire system to buy, which has been cool. And so then my meal plan, which is the part that I've been trying to do the most work in, is basically I go in here and I got this from Marie Poulin's, I think, meal plan. She did this a few years ago, and I tried to follow some of this along. And so I was able to use my events planner to like add it into there. I don't know why. Oh, because I think initially the status grouping wasn't a part of the database system at the time that I made this. And so I guess it just kind of automatically rolled itself into whatever the next status grouping was. But yeah, there was that kind of those like, what do I have on hand? What do I need? What items do I need to replenish or add to the list? And then I could break it down and be like, okay, this is what I have. So this is the way that I would go and do my grocery shopping. I would go through and I'd take a picture of everything in my pantry and I'd write down what I had. And basically what I would do is see if there were things that I could use up. And I would like write it down. So to have this brain dump idea pot, I'd add a new menu idea, which would basically be me on my iPad, kind of like, okay, writing down this and writing down that, and then seeing if I can group some things together to make like, oh, I can make spaghetti because this is actually pizza sauce. There's some flour here, so I can make like pizza. There's tons of pasta, so I could obviously make something with the pasta. There's tuna here, so like there was a lot of little things that I could make. There's potatoes down there. There's all that pasta right there. There's like nuts and things that I can do with that. There's like, cereal, like that type of stuff, right? So I would always just be looking for areas that I could um, create something with what I had, so that this pantry was so tiny. And so I really couldn't stockpile food. And I only had this space as well as my fridge to work with. And I really didn't want to have food in so many compartments, because that just meant it would spoil over time, right? So there were areas that I was using for as a separate pantry for like things like, bulk water or bulk soda or bulk bubbly water or whatever, because it obviously wasn't going to fit there, and it was just way too heavy for this bottom shelf. But I didn't want it to be like on the floor in here. So, there were some other areas where I would do that, like canned goods and dry stuff, so that I could leave this area to be more like real time, like pull it out and using it, consuming it, and then if it needed to be refilled, I'd go into the other kind of bulk pantry to get that stuff and refill it until it was done, and I can go back and do that. So then I'd come down here, and let's see if I can actually go by meal. Oh, so what happened is, while I was um, going through my other areas in the dashboard, I was getting rid of in here the meal grouping. And so then it just took it and put it in whatever other group it wanted to put it in. So, excuse me, I have to create another property that would create the group. Oh, here we go. Maybe I can do this group by weekday, right? But because I'd actually gotten rid of a whole lot of those things, now I have to like go back and be like, there was a breakfast, there was a lunch, there was a dinner, there was a snack, and it had like that um, selection there, so it also showed as like a little tag on there. And then, but because this is on my events this year database, it actually was rolled up into like this main calendar that had like a whole lot of other things on there. And then I kind of lost track of like how I was going to find the things on there. And so I was like, I'm not sure if it's going to be useful. So I'll definitely be coming back to that. So next is my business stuff. So this is not as fleshed out either yet, but the most thing that I'm working on right now is bodies of work business. This page is not fully fleshed out. This is just kind of like this is just the vessel for this information. So there's some things that I want to include in here. There's some things that I want to be able to do, but here is another view of that same inbox that, those things have been filtered to land themselves here. So now when I come to this page, I can see these are all of the tasks that require some kind of processing, meaning I can do the thing, I can erase the task because it's no longer relevant, or it becomes a project that I can then set a suspense date on, a launch date for, or whatever. And these are just a list of all the businesses. So they're probably, this ink page is basically probably going to turn up to be a wiki, so that it can house all of these pages, and then all of these pages also have like, maybe they'll all be their own wiki. So Ultra Black is a Black brand and business directory that I'm building out so that people can, it's like yellow pages. You can do your ads on here. You can, search for Black businesses. That's something that I've been asked a whole lot. Do you know a Black-owned shoe store? Do you know a Black-owned this and that? And I usually could say, yeah, but because I'm following them on Instagram, or I networked with them because I found them on Google and I went to their store from wherever I was living at, and so I just held on to the information, that I really wanted to find a way to create a directory website, so that if somebody asked me about it, I could be like, oh, just go to this website. And so that would be it. So with that, if you are a Black business or Black owned business, Black owned brand, drop your information in the comments and I will keep your name. I will add your name to a mailing list. And so when this directory goes live, you guys will be the first to know that there's a space for you to promote your business, and you will get more traffic in that way. It's a for us, by us, right? For us and BUI us, right? Because that's what I'm on. Let's see. Then Pinkarella Productions is about just making stuff, actually producing things. So like think Tyler Perry Productions, or I think it's called Tyler Perry Productions, but like A24, that type of stuff. But even down to like commercials and ad campaigns and like the actual like production of the thing, a fashion show, a TV show, a radio broadcast, that type of stuff. That's what this is for. Content creation. Style work and CSE style work is basically image consulting, fashion consulting, personal styling, that type of stuff. Crown and Scepter is like merch, I think. I put that there, but I'm not really sure that that's going to come out of anything. But I was thinking Crown and Scepter would be like jewelry, accessories, luggage, shoes, that type of stuff. Property Group, all the business legal stuff. Bodies of Work, obviously, Bodies of Work is going to be business and business. Is the business end of the body wellness thing that I came into, which is spa, beauty, cosmetics, skincare, hair, that type of stuff. And then the work life, which is brand management, brand strategy, that type of stuff. Maybe some elements of image consulting, but really the style work life and CSC style work is the image consulting person, because it's about the individual rather than the brand, even though an individual can be a brand, but those things are differentiated based on whatever is needed by that client. So that's why they're separate that way. And then going into society, which is basically ways to connect with my community. This is my contacts database. This is like all the phone numbers. It's like my Rolodex. But this is also where I decide, like, when I'm giving gifts, if I'm giving certain sized gifts, if I'm giving like a list of Mother's Day things, because I'm not giving all the mothers that I know all the same types of gifts. I'm not giving my mom the same thing that I'll give my friend, kind of thing, but also like determining, because it's really easy for me to kind of lose track of that, but also like just a way to help me to remember, day ones and people that I network with that, I met in the military or when I got out of the military and things like that. So there's that. And then trust is literally managing the estate, not managing the home, managing the estate. So if there's multiple properties that I need to manage, the overarching things that help me to keep those locked in place. A trust, a will, a living will, any of those type of documentations, they will land themselves in here. Any type of information for investments, retirement plans, real estate investment plan, those type of things, they land here. So basically, the entire system is the Work Life Incorporated Society Trust, which is like a whole thing, but then they also are pillars. Each one is its own pillar, but then it can also be like work, which is the system for which you actually are engaging with your life every day. But then there's work life, which is how you incorporate it into your life, because you do your personal work and then you do it for your life. And then there's work life incorporated, meaning that you do all of that and then you run it into a business, because now you have a solid core that you have incorporated into your life, and now you can make money on it. And then you have the Work Life Incorporated Society, which is now you created a community of people that are like minded, that are doing some of the same things that you're doing, and they are not necessarily entrepreneurs, because not everybody's an entrepreneur, but maybe they have created a level of professional career life, right, for themselves, and now we are all part of one society, and we actually can build our own community, right? And then the trust is building economics into that society, so that we are now cycling our dollars, we are cycling our money, we are investing in each other, and we are informing each other by investing in each other mentally, spiritually, emotionally, physically, financially, all of those things all together, which then build a strong village, because we need that. I hate for people to talk about how, oh, I'm doing this without my village, and it's like, if you are sharing on social media, guess what? The people that are following you and that are affirming you and that are validating you in this community that you have now digitally, they are your village now. So you can't say that you don't have a village anymore, right? Expand your definitions of some of these words so that you are not constantly traumatizing yourself and re-victimizing yourself unnecessarily, just so that you can feel also validated by the work that you're doing, that is not necessary, that could not necessarily be helping you, or that could be more hurting you than helpful, or counterintuitive rather than productive. So that's all the things. I say all of that to say that, having found this app in particular to figure out how to manage the thoughts that go on in my mind on a regular basis, and create just the ability to create the vessels that will house these things, right? That, like, they won't spoil or be contaminated by the other things, that they can just live there. They literally can just live there as they are, right? And that they are valuable as they are. And because they are separate vessels for which I can engage specifically and mindfully and directly and intentionally, that now it holds so much more value, because it's just, it blows my mind that I've been able to find something that allows me to do this, because it has now permeated the way I do everything. And so now I'm just so ready to nerd out with people and be like, how are you doing this? How are you engaging? So, like, let's see. Drop your links down in the comments. Let's see. Reply, comment, share, save, subscribe, all of the things. And hopefully very soon I will get a little bit more of a momentum and a regular rhythm with coming on here and showing progress and how I'm building more of these pages out, so that it can give you more ideas of how to do this, and not just be hamster wheeling, just doing things that everybody else is doing, because that's not how we want to do things here. So